How's it going, Mason?
Hey Justin, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Awesome. How you doing?
Good, man. Just jamming like always.
Awesome. Still in Hawaii?
Just got back from Miami. Yeah, just settling back in. Went and spent a few days and caught up with my dad, my brother. We don't get together very often, so that was cool. Got to catch an Inter Miami game. Got to see Messi play for the first time in many years.
Oh,
And
awesome.
yeah, so that was epic. It's a great stadium that Beckham built over there in Miami. Really
Yeah,
well.
that's awesome, dude. I wish I got to saw a game while I was there.
Yeah, they're awesome. I mean, and it's not just Messi too. I mean, they've got, a few other world-class players, Sergio Busquets, Jordi Alba, Luis Suarez. I think they just got Marcelo. They're pretty loaded. Even though some of these guys are in their older years, they're still just top class. So, yeah, pretty cool to get to watch them all play.
That's great. Are you a big soccer fan?
I am. Yeah. I went to my first soccer game in 1994. It was a World Cup game, Spain versus Switzerland in Washington, D.C., at the old Washington Redskins Stadium, RFK. And that was actually the same year that the MLS started, I think, 94. And ever since then, I had become a big Barcelona fan, mostly because of Ronaldinho. I just loved his style of play. Obviously, the Brazilian style is amazing, but he in particular is just off the charts talented, and he just did everything with such sprezzatura. He's just always smiling and making things that are really hard seem really, really easy. And so, well, and I just always loved the history of Barcelona. They were sort of like the underdog, and Real Madrid was always like the monarchy's team, like the king and queen's team. And Barcelona was always sort of like the outcast, like the underdog. And so I always liked their history, but then Messi joined, and then it was just like, oh man, that was I've watched the lion's share of his career since he started it. I think he was 17 when he first came in as a pro,
Yeah,
up from the youth program. And yeah, I've been following him pretty closely ever since. That man, Barcelona. So got to see some games. I lived in Spain for a little while years ago, so I got to see a bunch of games over there.
oh, super sick.
Yeah. So yeah, I love soccer because it's just such an international game. You go in person, it's such an international vibe. Really cool.
Did you watch the World Cup? Of
Oh
course you did.
yeah.
But were you there in person or you watched it on TV?
No, I wish I was there in person. I watched it here, the game. I think it was on like 3 or 4 in the morning my time here in Hawaii. And yeah, that was an emotional roller coaster, man. I mean, that was like, Argentina went up two, and then France tied, and then extra time, and then all the way to PKs. It was so stressful. I think the whole world just wanted Messi to get that last missing piece to his
Mhm.
collection. And yeah, that was one of the greatest games of any sport I think I've ever seen.
I think I've only been alive 18 years, but I've watched a lot of soccer. I used to play as well. That was definitely the best game I've ever seen, just by far.
Totally. Yeah, on both levels, the actual game itself and how dramatic and close that was, but then all of the context leading up to that game, with Argentina having, lost, I think it was 8 years earlier in the finals, and then just Messi coming so close. And up until a couple years before that, he had never won a trophy with Argentina. So they had won the South American Cup 2 years prior, so that was like a big accomplishment. And then to cap it off with that, it was so great. He's so deserving. One of my favorite things about Messi, he's he's class. He's pure class. He's the best player in history, and he's humble, and he's just, modest and really supportive of all his teammates. when fans storm the field, he never just he deals with it. He sort of just like gives them a hug, lets them take a picture, whatever it is that they're after. And so many players are just disgusted when fans run on the field, and it's done out of love. Yeah, yes, it's inappropriate. They're disrupting the game, but it's done out of love. So it's sort of tough to see players just turn their backs on people, and they're risking getting thrown out of the game. And it's uh it's cool to see Messi just be supportive and inclusive, and he's just such a class act.
Yeah. So you're in like the sports industry, or less you used to be with lacrosse.
Yeah,
Do you follow like the soccer industry as well? Like the
I
business side of
do.
it?
Yeah, so lacrosse and soccer are the two sports I follow the most. Um, and I love all sports. I love competition and athletics in general, but definitely follow lacrosse and soccer the closest.
So what's like something like interesting about the soccer industry that people don't know?
Yeah, great question. So something that I really want to see happen with American soccer, and it's a big different distinguisher between where we're at and where a lot of the rest of the world's at. The rest of like a lot of the European nations and South American and Central American nations, they have different tiers of pro teams. They have their youth academies. We have our youth academies, but then there's the first team, there's the second team, there's the third team, and it creates a level of competition within the club, and that's really important. But beyond that, the leagues themselves have different divisions. So if you look at Premier League, right? They've got multiple tiers of leagues. So there's promotion and relegation. And
Mhm.
promotion and relegation is a critical component that we don't have because we have the MLS. We've got 15 teams in the East, 15 teams in the West, and there's no relegation. If you end up in last place, you're still in the MLS next year. If we had like a second tier professional league, or maybe eventually even a third tier where teams could get relegated, or the top teams from the second tier could get promoted to the top tier, that would do a lot for the competitive nature of American soccer. And I think it would really push us forward. And I think that's something that not a lot of people realize. That if you're not a soccer fan, you probably might not know that's how a lot of leagues around the world are structured. So that's something I would love to see happen here in the U.S.
Yeah, I didn't know that actually, because when we played like club level, we had promotion and relegation. I was part of a club at the beginning, like the first year they did it. So obviously they started as bronze, but
Yep.
we got promoted to silver, gold. I think they're premier now. I mean, I left, but
Yep.
so it's interesting that like the youth have it, but not like the professionals.
Right? Yeah, and it's a really critical component to the competitive nature of the professional league. And yeah, without it, I mean, without it, it's just there's no consequence for ending up last or the bottom three. If you take Premier League, La Liga, and any of them, Bundesliga, it's that bottom three that get relegated, and the top three from the second tier that get promoted. It's just really healthy for the competitiveness of it.
Yeah, no, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Is there something like that in lacrosse as well, professionally?
Not yet. No, lacrosse is a lot younger of a sport. I mean, you're talking about, technically lacrosse is one of the oldest sports. But it's not as developed as soccer. Soccer became the most popular sport across the world very quickly, and that really advanced it on every level at an expedited manner. So soccer's had the opportunity to really develop very thoroughly. Lacrosse didn't get that same adoption that soccer got. So lacrosse really, up until recently, the past decade or two, um, the pro league started in 2001, and we had the MLL, and then the PLL started a handful of years ago, and then sort of merged and absorbed the MLL. And so now we have this one league, and it's great. They're doing great. It started as sort of a traveling city model, and now everyone has home cities. So that's a progression in the growth of the league. Um, but the sport's very so I'll give you an example. When I moved out to California in 2000, from the East Coast, it was hardly existent. I mean, there was some schools had it. It was very early stage on the West Coast, and even places that are really strong right now, like Colorado or Texas or Florida, they hadn't really adopted the game hardly at all at that point. It was about a little over 20 years ago. So it's just in the last decade or two that it's really taken off on these some of these non-traditional areas. So it's fairly new in a lot of areas. And back then I think there was only like maybe 50 or 60 D1 teams, maybe a couple hundred D3 teams. And so it really it's changed a lot in the last couple decades. Um, but it's getting more and more adopted now. For years, it had so many barriers. One, it was not well known. It wasn't well publicized. Um, and beyond that, it always had this friction with football, for example. So a lot in the past, years ago, football coaches didn't want their players playing lacrosse because they thought it was going to fatigue them and injure them for football. And it was really the reverse mindset of how it should have been. The smart ones got on it early and realized this is phenomenal cross training. And every time a lacrosse player came back to football from lacrosse season, they were faster, more explosive, more coordinated, and just a better all-around athlete. And conversely, lacrosse coaches, the smart ones, wanted their lacrosse players playing football or basketball or other sports because of that cross training component is so important. That the multi-sport athlete always has, not always, but almost always has more success than a single sport athlete because of that cross training. So yeah, anyway, that's just an example of like a hurdle that lacrosse had early on was, the football coaches were all against it. And so that slowed the growth a little bit. And, it's, another thing is it's not a cheap sport to get into. So, if you're from a more of a struggling demographic, that's a lot of expensive equipment you got to buy. And then you got to pay to join a team and play in leagues. And so there was a financial barrier for a while. So, but I'm really, stoked to see that it's had a lot of success despite some early hurdles. It's doing well now. And we got the Pro League, which is growing. College teams, there's more college teams than ever, D1, D3, D2. And yeah, it's good. It's good to see it growing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you said the first pro league started in 2001, right?
Yes, the first lacrosse pro league.
Were you
Outdoor lacrosse pro league. We had box lacrosse before that. That was a
got it?
pro. Yeah.
Were you working like in the lacrosse industry at that time?
I was still in college, actually. So I had, so growing up, I was very fortunate to grow up in a what was one of the traditional hotbeds of lacrosse. There was sort of like the DC Baltimore area where I grew up. There was Long Island, and then kind of like Long Island, like Connecticut, that area, and then there was like upstate New York. Those were three of like the original core epicenters of talent, and I was fortunate to grow up in one of them. Went to a really strong high school in Northern Virginia, right on the border of Maryland. And so I just organically got into this system. My friends played, so I was like, this looks fun. It's fast paced, it's aggressive, it's physical, high scoring usually. And I was like, what's not to love about this? Just my friends were playing and I got into it and ended up going to a good high school and fell in love with it and ended up getting recruited to nearly 50 different NCAA programs coming out of high school. And unfortunately, like my parents weren't really that involved with it. They weren't athletes. They didn't really give me a lot of guidance. I kind of had to navigate a lot of it myself, which is very difficult for a teenager to navigate the recruiting process. Not a lot was known about it then. There was no online. I mean, there was no like websites back then. Yeah, that was like the olden days. And um, but I picked my school and I really went back and forth. So back then, Division 1 was certainly the most talented, most athletically competitive division. But back then, actually, Division 3 was much stronger than Division 2. It was kind of a reverse. Not a lot of people know that unless you had been in the game at that time, you wouldn't really know that. But uh, yeah, so it was sort of like you look at it like D1, D3, D2, and a lot of like top D3 schools were really comparable to a lot of like mid to lower end D1 schools. And in fact, there were in fall ball, which was like, off season scrimmage tournaments, D3 teams would play D1 teams. So it was back then in the culture, that was very like part of just how it was. So for me, I was just like, I was trying to find a team. I wanted to win a ring for sure. No denying that. Every kid wants to win a national championship. But beyond that, I wanted to find a team that had the strongest chemistry. And I went on all these recruiting trips all around, up and down the East Coast, even as far west as Ohio. Ohio State had a really strong program. I went on a recruiting trip to Ohio State, and Ohio Wesleyan had a really strong D3 team at the time. And so I went on all these recruiting trips, and I saw all kinds of stuff that was, big turnoff, whether it was fighting at practice or just lack of support for teammates. Until I went on a recruiting trip to upstate New York, I went and looked at Cornell, and I went and looked at Ithaca College, Cornell D1, and Ithaca was at the time a powerhouse D3 program. And the support and the camaraderie that I saw at Ithaca College, for me, it was like, okay, this is it. Like I wasn't thinking like resume wise, I wasn't thinking, oh, I need to have a D1 school. I had all these options. I could have chose D1 or 3 or 2 or whatever. And I knew that I wanted to win a ring, and I wasn't really quite good enough to play at a D1 school that would have won a championship, like a UVA or Princeton or Syracuse. I was a little off that pace. So Ithaca College, they were like a top 4 in the nation team, pretty consistent top 10. And I was like, okay, so I've got a chance to win a ring and the chemistry is super strong. That's good for me. So I ended up at Ithaca College, and it was a hell of an experience. It was really intense. And my first year there, we ended up going to a national semifinal and lost by 1 goal. I was 1 goal away to getting to the championship game. And it was great and painful at the same time. I had probably nightmares for about 10 years after that about having lost that game. But it was just the learnings that came from it were unmeasurable. And then, so that was my first year. And then my second year there, we actually made it to the quarterfinals and lost to the same team again, which was Middlebury, by a goal in the quarterfinals the following year. And the first year was great. So I got to play for a Hall of Fame coach. His name is Jeff Long. He just retired recently. He was at Ithaca for, 35 years or something like that. And just a guru, just an absolute legend. And he really took the momentum of the loss from the semifinal, really rallied it to build strong team chemistry. And I think we were stronger mentally, emotionally, and physically because of how he handled that. He really turned it into a positive. And then the second year when we lost the same team by a goal, it was a tough transition. It was a tough to recover from that. And anyway, there was some various disagreements in the team, and that magic chemistry that had attracted me originally sort of dissipated a little bit. And at that point, I sort of just thought that maybe I'd move on from competitive lacrosse, move out west, start pursuing my other passion, which was surfing. And so I transferred in 2001. Was that 2000? Yeah, I think it was 2001, right around there. I transferred to California. I actually just got in my car and drove. I actually didn't even transfer at first. I literally packed up my Jeep and just drove out west. I landed in Santa Barbara randomly. And I knew that I needed to stay in school because I was afraid that I would lose my focus if I didn't stay in school. So I enrolled at Santa Barbara City College, and it was amazing. It was such a great school for a junior college. Had an epic time. Santa Barbara for a year, surfed there, and then still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I ended up studying abroad in Costa Rica for a semester, stalling, delaying. Eventually, I finally, right before I went to Costa Rica, I was actually on the beach in Malibu surfing and got out of the water. I was working at Duke's as a valet and got out of the water, asked some random guy what time it was because I was trying to see if I was going to be late for my shift or not. And the person that I actually asked on the beach was the lacrosse coach at Pepperdine. And he, I guess, had seen my Jeep with, I had Virginia plates and a lacrosse sticker on it at the time. So he had seen the Jeep before, I guess, or watched me walk back to it. And I'm changing out of my wetsuit, getting ready to go to work. And he's like, "Hey," he's like, "Who are you and what are you doing out here?" I was like, "I don't even know what I'm doing out here." It's like I just got in my car and drove out here. I just knew that I wanted to surf, and that's it. I was like, "That's my story." And he's like, "Well, you're coming to Pepperdine." And I was like, man, I was like, one, I don't have the grades for that. Two, I don't have the money for that. And I was like, it sounds great, but I don't know how that's going to happen. And he's like, "I'm going to work on it." And I was like, "All right, well," I was like, "I'm going to Costa Rica for a semester. You call me." So I was in Costa Rica and I got an email from him and he had worked a few things out and all of a sudden I was transferring to Pepperdine and transferred there. They had one or two really strong players, and the rest were lacking experience. But I arrived and we were able to turn that program around. I think they had won maybe one game the year before. I think we went almost undefeated. We went undefeated nonstop until the last game of the year. We lost to USC by 1 goal in the championship game. So that was cool. So I spent a couple years at Pepperdine, had a blast, met some really great friends, and that then transitioned me into the lacrosse industry. And so I graduated from Pepperdine. I actually took a year break and surfed my way around the world for about a year. Then came back to California and ended up joining up with one of the guys that I had played lacrosse with at Pepperdine, had started a lacrosse store in the area, and I joined up with them, and that's how laxstore.com happened. And we had a couple brick and mortar locations in LA and a strong online presence. And yeah, I mean, I got back from surfing my way around the world, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life. I have like, I know lacrosse really well, and it was very early. Lacrosse hadn't established on the West Coast yet, so I thought, hey, you know, maybe this is an opportunity here. And one thing led to another, and did that for a few years, and then that evolved into growing leagues and tournaments, and then eventually travel teams, and helping other kids get recruited to play in college, and helping them navigate that process that I had to do on my own years prior.
So how successful was laxstore.com and the surrounding like ventures you spun off of that?
Yeah, so laxstore.com was fairly successful. We our biggest challenge, and this is really a key part of business and having success, is timing. We were actually a little ahead of the curve. We were a little too far ahead of the curve. The area at first wasn't ready to support a retail store, no less two. So we had diversified. We had rented out this big 5,000 square foot facility. We put down turf and weights and made like a training facility for lacrosse and other sports as well. Really tried to be, you know, crafty with the space that we had to work with. But Lax Store, you know, the retail component was fairly successful, but there was a team sales component, which was a little bit more successful, where we were doing like uniforms and stuff for teams all over the country. So that was pretty good. Um, and it really was a really strong educational experience for me. I learned a lot about the market, the lacrosse market on the West Coast, and kind of where it was at and what was upcoming. And I was able to really kind of predict some of the upcoming needs of the area. And that actually, you know, what I learned in that experience was what really set me up for the next experience, which was running these Well, first I ran leagues and tournaments, which was not that successful, but then it was the travel teams that became really successful. So I ran a program called Team West Coast, and we to this day have had one of the most successful programs in the history of the West Coast in terms of games won, tournaments won, players recruited. We still have a bunch of players from our teams that are playing in the NCAA right now, that you can watch on ESPN on the weekends. And so that's super rewarding. The financial side, it's business, so the financial side is always important. But to be honest, the thing that fills your cup the most, once you have some success in life, you make some money, it's great, but you find that the greater value is actually in helping other people's lives move forward and helping other people become successful and starting their paths. So yeah, I mean, helping train players. Training was there were a couple other programs out on the West Coast at the time that were getting kids into college, but they weren't doing any training. They weren't teaching them the lifestyle of the competitive athlete. They weren't training how to operate beyond your years. And that's really the secret to getting recruited. It's not just, everybody can play. There's a lot of people that are really good at lacrosse. It's how you manage your lifestyle. It's how you communicate with those around you. The refs, your parents, you name it. I can't even tell you how many times a top school will get interested in a kid because they're super talented. They'll go and watch them then be rude and disrespectful to their parents in the parking lot when the player doesn't realize the coaches are watching, and boom, that opportunity is dead immediately because those coaches don't want that baggage in their program. One, it can be contagious in a negative way to other players, but two, they've got the entire country to choose from talent wise. So why would they choose talent when the talent comes with strings attached when they could find talent that doesn't come with strings attached? So that was a big thing that was missing on the West Coast at the time, and that was something that we did. We did training. We really helped prepare them and become men of character overall, not just great lacrosse players, but great people. And to see that, to see the players in our program take that and roll that into the next phase of their life, whether it's, some of them are in college, some of them are graduated from college and they're professionals now in other areas. That actually unexpectedly became the most rewarding part of any of those ventures by far.
That's awesome. And then, so from doing those teams, how long were you running this for? And then when did you kind of transition into other industries? Because are you still involved in the lac space right now?
No, I haven't been for many years. I still follow the game. I'm still addicted to watching college lacrosse and pro lacrosse. But no, I left the lacrosse industry in 2016, 2017. And what had happened was a few people in my network had seen what I had done building that business. Because you realize the lacrosse industry was very much a cottage industry, still sort of is, meaning that it's small and developing. There's not a lot of money in it. It's not like one of these other industries like finance or, something, beverage, for example, where it's a big industry and there's a lot of money in the industry. So to be successful in lacrosse back then, it really took an extra level of commitment and savvy and dedication to be successful. And so a bunch of my friends had seen that success against the odds. And I actually thought I was going to take a year or two off and just kind of chill and get back into surfing full time. And um, I had some friends reach out and just say, "Hey, can you help me build my business?" So I ended up becoming a consultant without meaning to or planning to. But I had a friend that was in the broadcast industry who had reached out and asked for some help. I had a friend that was doing a bartending catering service who had reached out and asked for help. And yeah, all of a sudden one thing led to another, and I was consulting for a handful of businesses. And that was another great chapter because it was really it was building a business from a different perspective. I was not a founder. I was, coming in with experience. I was coming in with both success and failure under my belt, which was, the experience and the knowledge that I was able to help share with these other founders and help steer their businesses, avoid and mitigate risk, and avoid pitfalls, and capitalize on opportunities, and help steer the businesses in a successful direction. And so that was really cool. And then I did that for a few years, and ultimately what I realized after a few years of consulting was that, so my wiring, I'm all in. Like when I commit to something, I'm in like with all of my being. And to do that, it takes a lot of energy. And that's partly how I'm wired. And I think that also got emphasized by being a founder, because if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you better be ready to fully commit yourself. So like that's just my wiring and my experience. So what I realized was that consulting, it was tough to show up every day and give that level of commitment towards a business that wasn't mine. And so I realized, hey, this has been great helping other people, but I don't know how to do anything half throttle. And so I really needed to just kind of refocus on doing something for myself again at that point. I don't regret it in any way. It was a great experience. I'm glad that I got those years of consulting, because again, I got to grow business from a different angle. But ultimately, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and so I eventually just kind of shifted back towards doing my own thing. And yeah, but no, it was a great experience consulting. So yeah.
What would you have any advice for young entrepreneurs who are like in high school right now or even college?
Yeah, definitely. I got no shortage of advice. Yeah, so first the first thing is, I think that something that really can help young entrepreneurs stand out is, you hear people say things all the time about, be passionate about what you do, do something that you're passionate about. And people say things like, well, if you do that, you'll never work a day in your life. I don't think that that's true, actually. I think that hard work comes with something that you're passionate with. I think that something that's really important is that you commit to not only your craft, but and you do want to commit to your craft full on, but you also want to commit to overall and general professionalism. And what I mean by that, this often gets overlooked. What I mean by that is you want to make sure that, and we all do this better and worse at different times, but you want to make sure that you are respectful to everybody. And I don't care if that's a CEO or the homeless guy on the corner. You want to learn to carry yourself in a respectful manner always. The second thing is integrity. And again, this is something that everybody has their own journey with. But your success in business massively stems from the quality of your word. And if that's something as simple as saying that you're going to be somewhere at a certain time, punctuality, all the way to something as significant as, your word on a deal, a big contract or whatever it is. So, um, those kinds of things really matter. And then beyond that, beyond those are sort of the core components of professionalism. It's all the little things too. There's respect and there's integrity, but then under those umbrellas, there is all the little things that matter so much, whether it's punctuality, following up with emails, as punctual and as efficiently as you can be, or if it's making sure that you execute your work that the way you say you're gonna, um, just so I guess commitment to your craft, but commitment to professionalism is really important. And that will always help you stand out. Always. No matter who you're working with, whether you're doing your own venture, or if you're a partner in a venture, or if you're consulting in a venture, those skills you want to start mastering immediately at a young age, because then it just becomes inherent, right? Then it's just like reactionary. Then that it just becomes how you operate, and that will stand out. And you'd be surprised how many very successful businesses out there. There's people in really successful positions that need some polishing on those kinds of things. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. Most people aren't, but it should always be something that you strive for and do your absolute best to represent yourself in the most professional manner. If you're going to be in business, again, integrity, and your word and all of that, it matters so much, and you will stand out. It sounds really simple, right? If you get an email, try not to take a week to get back to them. Try to get back to them in 24 hours. Again, I'm not perfect at it, but it's something that I try to do. And so I think the better at you are at that, I think it will directly correlate to a successful career, no matter what you're doing.
That's great. Thank you, man. Well, this has been really super helpful. I'm gonna share this with all my students. They can watch this on YouTube. Like I've been recording this. I don't know
Cool.
how much
Awesome.
anything. But that's
Yeah.
awesome. Do you have anything else like you'd like to share with any of the kids?
Yeah. So I think that the first thing that I would share with everybody is never be afraid to think big. You cannot think too big. I think that you may not always reach your goal of, if you set a really lofty goal, you may or may not reach it, but always set a goal that should never be restricted. It should never be confined. There should never be thoughts of, oh, I don't know if I can achieve that. I don't know if I can get the money together. I don't know if I can learn that skill, whatever it is. Never set confines to yourself. And here's what will happen. If you reach the goal, mad props to you. I mean, that's you just achieved a super lofty goal. One, you should be proud of that. Two, you'll reap the benefits of that success. But if you don't reach that really big dream, that really big goal, falling short of it means that you fell short of something massively significant. So if you do, one, falling short means you're going to learn a really important lesson or maybe multiple really important lessons. We absolutely learn more from our failures than our successes, unquestionably. But if you set a massive goal and you fall short of it, you're still going to be probably a lot further along than you would have been if you had set a really conservative goal. So think big, dream big, and don't put constraints on yourself. That's really important. I had a friend of mine was a PGA golfer for many years. He was on the PGA Tour, and something that I learned really important. He was actually paired with Tiger Woods one day, and this was early on in his career. And the thing that he shared with me that was one of the most valuable pieces of advice that Tiger had given him was the concept of how you have on any given weekend, there's maybe 100 and I think it's 168 golfers enter the pre-cut on Thursday. They enter the tournament. Every single one of those guys is 100% convinced in their mind that they are going to win that tournament. And that is a critical mindset to go into any venture. I don't care if it's sports or entrepreneurship or anything in life. That mindset is so important because if you go and compete against 168 of the best golfers in the world and you don't think you're going to win, you've already lost. Like it's already over. So that was something that always really just a little tidbit. Again, sports and business, there's so much overlap, right? So much to learn from both. They're so relatable. But that was something that was really impressionable to me was like, wow, like 168 guys going for one spot. They all think they're going to win. Half of them are getting cut by, end of day Friday. What a phenomenal mindset to learn to have that relentless, ruthless positivity of in confidence. And capitalism, entrepreneurship is ruthless, right? It is sink or swim, like it or not. Capitalism is hardcore. You've got, the market, which is ruthless. You've got competitors that are ruthless. So again, this mindset, I think I'm really glad that you actually asked me for one more tidbit here, because this is something that I hope everybody listens to and adopts, because it was really impactful for me. I think it could be impactful for everyone else. But that mindset of just overwhelming confidence, just going into whatever venture that you do, no matter how big or small the goal is, just going into it thinking that you are going to succeed. And that's something I think somebody can take with them no matter where they're at, whether it's entrepreneurship or sports or whatever. Um, but yeah, that would be one more piece of advice to add to the list.
Overwhelming confidence that you're going to succeed. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
there's 170 people. Like you're the first one rolled out. If you just don't, if you're going in there with like half-assed.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Puts it into a wild perspective, right?
Hmm.
Uh, really shows you like where your mind needs to be for that competitive nature. Um, and yeah, that's a really cool piece of advice that I'm actually really stoked to get to share with everybody. I hope everybody takes that and runs with it.
Yeah, Justin, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Is there any way, like, for people who are watching right now, if they want to like learn more about you or check out what you're currently working on, for them to get in contact?
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Yeah, I have a modest LinkedIn account. To be honest, I haven't really put a ton of attention into it, but it just shows a little bit of my basic history there. But yeah, right now I am the COO for Eight Beverages, and so really, really excited every day to build and help move that business forward. We got an amazing team of guys that are building Eight Beverages and Ape Water. And so, we hopefully will be seen in stores everywhere very soon. We're working on building out California right now. We launched in Nevada, and we're in Colorado, and we're building out California now. We've got a rapid, aggressive expansion plan. Um, but yeah, that's what I'm up to right now. I was helping build Ape Beverages and Ape Water, and try to become the next major water beverage player in the industry. So, um, yeah, come check us out on socials. We had a little bit of a hiatus from socials, but we're back on it full time, and we've got a fresh website up. And yeah, that would be the place to see what I'm involved in right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think some of the students already applied for like internships, so they're working with like Itai and all those other folks.
Yeah, yeah, we got a few reaching out about marketing internships. What an awesome opportunity for them. That it's we're still early stage business, so they get the opportunity to be in very direct contact with the leadership and the decision makers, and the what they're going to learn from being in such close proximity. Not being 5 layers removed, managerial, down the pecking order. That's a great opportunity for them. I'm excited for them actually. I think they're going to learn a ton and have a great experience and help build a really up and coming brand. I think that's going to be um, a really positive experience for them, and we're really grateful to have their help. And yeah, man, and that wouldn't have been possible without everything you're doing. So really appreciative of all your efforts. Being a young entrepreneur, you're just hungry for guidance, right? You want to drink from that fire hose of knowledge. You want to learn as much as you can, as fast as you can, because that's your competitive advantage, right? Knowledge. The more you can learn, the faster. So yeah, man, you're doing the community a tremendous service by heading up this opportunity to one, bring everybody together so that they can collaborate, share ideas, network, all the key things, right? But then look, like you're now helping provide experiences and opportunities for this community that you're cultivating and curating. And so that's a tremendous lift on your side. So yeah, I hope everybody appreciates that, a lot of the doors that you're opening for everybody too, because that's not to be understated.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. That means a lot. Well, I'm looking forward to probably working on some more collabs with Ape Water and YEA. But yeah,
Yeah.
this is awesome. I really appreciate everything you said. I think people watching are gonna take a lot of advice from it.
Yeah.
So really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It's awesome. I'm really grateful and humbled that I get to share some of my experiences with community, and that's what it's all about, man. Paying it forward, you know. When you guys get older and you guys are all kinds of successful, you're gonna naturally want to do the same thing. You're going to help out the next generation, and that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. All right, man. Take care. It looks like it's still bright in Hawaii, which is pretty awesome. So enjoy.
Yeah, it's earlier in the day. It's only 4 o'clock, a little after 4 here. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah. But yeah, Mason, thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast. And yeah, man, maybe we'll do it again someday.
All right, man. Sounds great. Take care.
All right, you too. See ya.
Peace.